Okay, welcome, Squatties. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. We're around the globe. For me, it's morning. For Chance, it's just about bedtime. So we're fortunate enough that he's joined us after a hard day of work, play, and probably a few beers. We brought him here today to kind of talk about what he's been doing with Squad, what he's, as the title mentions, is part of the mapping and environment team. And you've been seeing a lot of his work in the recaps lately, so we're going to jump into that in just a minute. But first, I want to have Chance introduce himself. So, Chance, tell us who you are.
Um, I'm Chance. I've been on the team for about 15 months. Um, yeah. I don't know what else to say.
First of all, I mean, you're kind of been our phantom guest for the last couple streams where we've mentioned, either the cache gate or your other chances to stream. So it feels like it was only fair to kind of have you on to defend yourself against the slings and arrows we've cast your way. Why don't you tell us how you got started with mapping? I mean, how did you come to the squad team?
Originally, I just started I downloaded the SDK when it was just as like a zip file before it actually released onto the UE4 page. And I was just playing around with it while I was looking for work. Didn't understand a thing on it. I actually downloaded it like 2 or 3 times because I got the shits and just kept on deleting it. I didn't understand a thing, and eventually it just clicked, and I went on to make Kohan and got approached. Um, and obviously that became official, so it was kind of crazy. Um, and still continued to look for work, but at the same time I was like, I could probably do this again. Uh, the wife wasn't too happy about me just like not looking for work is hard, or just kind of playing video games and making maps. And when I sold the second one, which was Basra, it was kind of like she kind of hopped off my back a bit and was like, oh, okay, maybe something might come of this. And eventually, I was brought onto the team, and I haven't looked back since.
Yeah, and we've been definitely glad to have you. We had talked kind of previously about your experiences in Modern, and you actually started by kind of taking one of the existing squad maps and messing around and getting a little bit more familiar. Can you tell us kind of how you made that jump into making your own maps?
Yeah, well, I literally just pulled a height map off Google and ripped out Logar's sky, attached Logar's terrain, and I just played around with that, just sculpting. And I thought I made like the greatest map that was ever to happen in Squad. And obviously, when I started posting up images and all that kind of stuff on the forums, I think it was Iron Taxi that came along and said like check out the frames, and then I checked them out, and it was like 13 frames when I hopped in as a playable character, and I was just like, oh, okay, well, lesson learned. Um, so I took a lot from that, um, learning about placements, obviously densities. Um, so whilst nothing really came of that map itself, I learned so much from that mistake. Um, yeah.
Yeah, so that's kind of a hot topic among the community. And while you're not a technical programmer, I did want to kind of talk about you have. I mean, you've kind of mentioned optimization. You've learned. What are some of the tricks you've learned to kind of keep your maps flowing, both in terms of like FPS and just general like fun? I mean, it's probably not too uncommon to realize that you have to get a lot of soldiers in one area, and that has to be a way people can play without choppiness and that kind of thing.
Well, I've learned like less is best, and I it's very hard to explain, but um, it's kind of just an eye for detailing. You don't have to have like 100 objects in a space to make it feel dense. It's just the placement of those objects to give the illusion that there's actually more than what there is. Um, and I play a lot of Squad. Like originally, I was a Kickstarter backer, and I just played a lot of it, and now I'm on the team. And I still consider myself more of a player than a dev, because every time when I approach my maps, I think how I play it out, how the community that I play with plays the maps themselves. So I try and work my maps around that to either challenge or to um, kind of allow that kind of game flow to flow.
Yeah, we've probably kind of skipped over a vital step here, and which maps do you see as yours? So which ones have you had a major hand in creating? I mean, obviously it is a group effort. There's a lot of stuff from the environmental team, the modelers, stuff like that. But obviously you put your footprint on a few that really shows ChanceBrahh.
Yeah, well, Kohan was my first. That was pretty much all done by me. Maybe like 10% after I handed it off to OWI. Chris played around with it a bit, fixed up the river, and obviously polished it up a bit more to make it an official release. Basra was like a team collaboration. I ended up getting Axton, which is obviously he's on the team now. Asifa or Asi, he was one of the guys that created some of the Basra building assets. Stom, and
I have heard if you need a good time, you can just call him directly.
yeah. And there's a guy called The Red. I don't know if he's on Discord or anymore, but
we definitely featured him in a couple of wrenches, so he's been around. I don't know if he's in the community Discord.
Yeah, he came to me and asked me if I wanted any signs, and I was like, yeah, okay, I want a goat sign that kind of just like kind of alludes to that, but just in a joking way. And some people taking it lighthearted, and other people it's like not so well. But it always comes back to Assy and not me. So
well done, well done. There's a good question here. Bumbox wonders if we're going to release with 100 players. Well, that's not your department. I do want to kind of touch on, Squad is an evolving game, and you've had to kind of evolve your maps from, like, mostly right now people are paying 40 or 40 for smaller. We've had requests for smaller maps for seeding. How do you approach, kind of different size maps? Do you look at that when you're creating a new one?
I don't really design my maps around the player counts. Like when I was doing Camdash, I wanted to have a whole bunch of different layers set up for different amounts of players. So obviously, like an infantry layer that wasn't going to be majorly spread out. This is like Camdash is a 4K map, and I want it to be a relatively fun, quick style infantry gameplay layer. But that area of that map is also got to be usable on a 4K map without them feeling like they're so dense, like all these different villages that are so close to each other. So that comes into play, but designing a map around either 40 players or 100 players, the map itself, not really.
Cool. So
I just think about the gameplay later.
Yeah, really just kind of about creating a cool environment, and you can kind of go from gameplay there. Is that fair to say?
Yeah.
Caught you mid-drink. Sorry. Yeah, that's awesome. And again, you'd mentioned Axton, and you both kind of came up from the community. So this is, again, an opportunity to point out that, like, if you're making cool stuff in our community, we will look at it. We're watching it. We do bring on people from the community as developers. And yeah, like, that is fortunate. We do pull from the community. Chance does gain incredible shit ton. We're a little worried about him sometimes. But he is a squad expert, so it is definitely somebody that is in there and kicking ass. And we've talked about how you are more of a player. Are there any maps that you play, that you've created, that you're disappointed there's not a space that gets played with more, or areas on a map that you would love to see used more?
I did Balea. Balea was a joint map. I originally came onto, like, when I first came onto the team, it was Oxycubes, or I think it was Oxycube. I just referred to him as
Oxygen Cube Drew.
He had this map planned out, all drew up, and obviously when I came onto the team, there wasn't something that was set in stone for me. So it was kind of like, well, I have this map that I would like to do. Would you like to do it? And of course, I put my hand up, being the new guy, and we designed that map in Co. Certain areas of the map are more his, other parts are more mine. But some of the gameplay layers are just slightly adjacent to the points that I really liked. So there's a mine on the top right-hand side, parallel across from train tunnel, that never gets used on any of the layers. And I just love that design of it because of the whole steep rock faces and the two parallel roads that go down either side of this factory. and that's not used on any layers. And probably Kohan. Like Kohan as a map in general. It was my first map, and I'm still really proud of it. But at the same time, I'm like, if I had another go at this, I could probably make it so much better. But like I said, I'm still very proud of what I did back then.
Awesome, and it is a good map. You know, it has been with us a while, and maybe you will get a chance to go back. We could have Kokan B2. I do
More
remember
weapons.
the point you described. We had when we were doing LMG testing, we had set up that, and it was I had wandered off because I was getting brutally slaughtered in the tunnels because I'm not very good at LMG, and the tunnels on Bly are you know, everybody has their own issue there. But yeah, wandered off and like, oh, this is amazing. I want to fight, and like I think it was Nurcon who immediately just popped up and beat the shit out of me there. So I was like, this is beautiful, and immediately took a headshot. So I agree. People should be checking out these points, and hopefully, I think we've with Narva even we've done some layer adjustments where people can play more of the map, and I know that's something that Sergeant Ross and other map or you know the layer developers are looking at is kind of getting some of the less access parts of the map used. It is, you know, there's a lot of map there, like you said.
Yeah,
You
it's a
have
big
designed a
map. Yeah.
4K map, you know. And speaking of, you had touched on Camdash as kind of something you're working on. Can you kind of give us the high level overview of what Camdash is going to be?
So Camdash is kind of like the the bigger brother of OP First Light. Obviously, OP First Light's been around since like one of the very first testing branches. It was originally designed just around like a foliage test map, and for those that went through all the stages of like closed alpha, we've seen like the nighttime version, like that really small outpost and a couple HESCOs. And now it's really starting to show its age when you have like 80 players on it. And that's like eventually when we have 100, like an extra 20 doesn't sound like many, but that's like 3 or 4 squads that you're going to have like working in sync and spreading across the map. So needed to have a bigger map, but also give that same kind of feeling, terrain wise, foliage wise. But um, I also wanted to add something new to it, and that was by going to like a northern Afghanistan kind of mountainous kind of bit of change of scenery, but still keeping that same kind of gameplay rush mechanics. Certain factions and certain areas can get from A to B quicker. You can go off road, but then you also run the risk of like getting stuck on a rock, running into trees because of the thick foliage. Like if you've watched any of the comps, that's usually what the militia do. They go straight off road, and it's like if you do this on Camdash, it's the risk for the reward. Like if you get stuck, that's your own fault. If you manage to go off road and get from A to B before anyone else, like good on you. Like it's I don't know. I like the rush mechanic, and I also don't. So I want to kind of facilitate both of those, and I really like um, uneven gameplay. Like whilst the insurgents can get from points quicker with the technicals, and the US are a bit slower, they've also got the sights. So I kind of they've got their ups and downs. Um, so yeah, it does it'll play out quite evenly depending on how people play the map. It's meant to be punishing. If you play like crap, it's going to be punishing, and like teamwork fixes everything.
That's a really kind of fascinating take on that. Team balance and kind of especially the asymmetrical balance of the teams and how to make them more distinct comes up a lot, but it's usually approached from like a faster weapon standpoint or more grenades. This is kind of the first that we've really been exposed to the idea that like insurgents are almost fighting on their home terrain. They should have the mobility advantage. They are a faster, more agile team. We're not seeing that just in kits. We're actually seeing that in some of the terrains, and that's really cool to me. That like you know you're thinking about game balance well ahead of when it's ready for testing, and that's something that it's worth noting.
Yeah, because I play like I said, the way that I play online and the community around me when I'm playing, I see how they interact with maps, and I'm like, well, obviously, if I set this up like that, no doubt someone's eventually going to rush this point, realize that they can get there well ahead of anyone else. And then I think of the advantages, disadvantages. Like if they get to there, it's kind of like they're stuck up there. but they can also reinforce this other point. But if they start getting hit there, there's nowhere for them to go. So, like I said, risk for the reward. If you can pull it off, you deserve to be rewarded.
So, how many complaints do you think you're going to get about not having snipers on that map? Sniper kit now!
I don't know, how many do we get daily already?
Probably about one a day at least.
We might double it.
Right on. I didn't want to jump to the chat here. There's a question from Aragon89EI. Are you guys, the mapping department, to try to add more? Are we trying to add more points of interest to bigger maps? Medium cities, more villages? They take as example Burning Sands or Bejar Canyons from PR, if you remember those maps. Yeah, are you looking to add more diversity to maps? I know Camdesh kind of has a lot of structures that looks like just a horrible place to die repeatedly.
Yeah, there's no cover. So yes, we are looking at expanding some other maps. Obviously, you have read in recaps and stuff that Kohat is getting a massive expansion. And Kohat being like my second favorite map, I'm like so keen for that.
Yeah.
And Gorodok, maybe. I don't know. We're gonna have to see how it performs, like, to the masses after Axton's massively, like, optimized it. And there's been some tiny little discussions about Yeho because
Yeah.
there's a lot of room on that map.
Yeah, we know there's room for improvement on a lot of the maps, and they're kind of slowly getting there. They're once, we're talking about the Kohat expansion here. Yeah, I mean, we're looking at these maps. What would be going in to make them a little bit different? Is it new building models? Is it something just a rearrangement of kind of structure? Are you looking at more, urban planning structures to kind of get it more realistic? Or
We'd probably end up recreating some of the road network and then removing some villages, moving them, like spreading them out, maybe even adding some of like the Nava style buildings there. That's like one option. Maybe take another look at the factory cap point itself. Just things like that. It's very early in discussion, but those are a couple things that we could do. There's just a lot of space on that map. So when the bigger vehicles eventually come in, like at the moment as it is, those vehicles would just be sitting off to the sides. And over on those sides, you kind of want to have something that the infantry can play around and actually have a reason for those tanks just to be there. You don't want to have two tanks just having a battle on the edge of the map. You as an infantry player want to be able to like see something like that going on.
yeah, there's probably room for that tank battling layer, just people slugging it out. Is that something we're considering in the future? I know we don't really have tanks ready yet. We've talked a little bit about the localized damage model. We know Bradleys are coming very soon.
Yeah, we have a map in development at the moment. It's been in development for a few months. You have probably seen a bit of a tease of it. It's the load-in screen of Squad currently, like that big desert. Yes, it's going to be a big tank battle. There are a few different villages, a big airfield, multiple cap points across the airfield. So I can't think of the name of the PR map, but it's loosely based around that and a couple of real-world locations.
So yeah, that's going to be really cool. I didn't even realize that it was going to be the map you can see as you load the game now, which is a relatively new feature, something I think is launched in V9 or V11. So yeah, that's really cool. I'm actually quite looking forward to exploring that now. I've jumped in and kind of cameraman mode and poked at the guys that are hanging out, and some of those the outpost that it features looks really cool. It's going to be hellish to defend against mortars, but it's going to be great.
Oh yeah, all that empty space. Yeah.
IWBTS wants to know, can we expect any more remakes of Project Reality maps? We could probably expect some rejects of maps if I were making them. They would be horrible. Yeah. We don't want those. But remakes, looking toward like Matra City, Sevna Outskirts, and I'm not even going to try Kamisha. I have never been able to pronounce that one.
Camisea.
Camisea?
Yeah, I know which one. I know which one he's probably talking about. There has been some discussions. We're still waiting on to get a bit further in development on this desert map. It's called Talil. I'll just chuck that out there. So want to get more of that flashed out, whatever. I can't even talk anymore. Want to get some more work done on that first before we start looking at actually starting to get a foundation for another map. But we have chucked out some ideas for another urban map. Very, very loosely based off Spencer outskirts in that kind of region. So we have I'll just say this now. I'm not going to talk about Fallujah, but I'm just going to mention Fallujah. We have all these new buildings that we're going to be using for Fallujah, and it would be very silly of us to just use those buildings for just one map. So doing something like Spencer, but having this kind of like a different biome. It's not so deserty, but a bit more green, a bit more lush. But those sort of buildings is something that we may discuss further along the lines. But it's out there. That idea.
Right on. And hopefully that kind of addresses the question from Bumbox too about more environments, more battlefields. Yeah, it's possible it's something we're looking at. We've also, people are looking at T buildings and things like that for a possible future. But right now we are working on, as kind of Chance put out, we're doing some optimization. We've got a couple maps in the pipeline, and after that, anything's possible. There's also a really good modding community. If you guys haven't checked out Forest Air, things like that, do so. Chance, have you actually had a chance to check out any of the maps? Have you seen anything that you're really stoked on in the modding world?
I haven't played anything. I have a look at the workshop every now and again. I saw some guy ended up doing a night version of Basra, which I would be really curious about how that runs with all the different light sources. And I don't know the name of it, but some guy did it was a lush firing range, and he had all the different weapons on the wall and what they were called. I thought that was just a really cool idea. I was like, why didn't we do that?
Yeah, no, that is definitely one I think we would like to steal some ideas from. There was a really good one with just every weapon just laid out on the wall like a museum. You could run around. There's a good firing range. It was
because at the moment everything's a BTR.
Right. Yeah. It is. Everything is a BTR. Even Chance drives a BTR to work some days. It's rough, but nobody bitches when you park funny. I know you had your editor back up on screen. If you could kind of show us what it looks like when you're actually working, and maybe give us an overview of what you're doing. I mean, for me, the editor is very, very complex. I'm still at that phase of maybe I'll check this out, and then I go in, cry a little bit, and come out with maybe a good screenshot or two. So yeah, if you as you're an expert, I want to pick your brain on that.
As I'm an expert, I I don't even know how to start this. Yeah, it's I don't know, just very simple tools. Obviously, a height map is just a black and white cloudy image that renders high and low points, and then I can either sculpt by raising terrain, lowering terrain, just manipulating it. So if I wanted to, I could create Nipple Hill and have my own little.
that is quite a nipple. Yeah.
It's a very nice looking nipple.
You can tell we keep Chance locked up pretty good when he has to make his own nipples in his maps. So we apologize. We'll let him out. We'll get him some sunshine in the future. But right now he is trapped in nipple hell.
So I usually just go around the entire map. I might just quickly do something. So if I wanted to place down a building here, where are my buildings? I probably shouldn't do this. It's gonna lag. Oh, no. Find where I want it, and then I'll just end up lowering and flattening the terrain around it. Just something very basic like this, and then I'd make sure I paint inside the hut or building, whatever you want to call it, so that there's no foliage inside.
And this is where you add the 300 catches per building, or does that come later?
Oh, that comes later. That's yeah, that's not fun at all. Just a little side thing. Ross said, like, yeah, just go ahead. If you feel like doing it, you can do it. And I was like, yeah, okay. So I was reading this document about how to place the caches, and it says on there that there's like about 500 on Samari. And I was like, well, that's a 2K map. I'm going to need to like double that. So I went through and I placed like 800 caches. And then he's like, nah, you could have done like 300. It's just, it's really random. You won't even get like 70% of those that show up. I'm like, thank you for telling me like 3 days later after I've placed every single individual cache. Like, got to
Lovingly
go inside the
handcrafted,
building.
yeah.
Yeah, go inside the building and actually just hand place the barrels or the caches exactly where I want them.
Dog's Buddy has kind of a good question as you do this. Do you have any tips for new map makers?
Um, there's no mistake, because it's always just going to be a learning point. Um, even if something sucks, you will have learned something from it. So don't give up.
As Adventure Time once said, sucking at something is the first step to being kind of good at something.
Yeah, well, I suck and I do this for a job now. So
You too can suck professionally.
yes, exactly.
Obviously, you do not suck. We're watching a map come to life before our eyes, and you are just kind of experimenting around. But I noticed that like you're kind of creating sight lines, you're creating areas of approach. I know that you play a lot of paintball. Is that something that actually kind of figures into how you develop a map? I mean, more than just playing, you're actually kind of going out and working as a squad in real life too.
Yeah, well, I look at like dead ground, all that kind of stuff. Where would I approach from? But then again, this is a game. Everyone's like, no one really cares if they get killed in this game. They don't have to walk back to respawn. They don't have to take like a 10-minute walk back to base. So people are a bit more gung ho. But at the same time, I do. There is a bit of a paintball aspect that I bring to it. Um, Definitely line of sights where I can see and what I can see from this point. And I always try and give an advantage and disadvantage to certain positions. I don't like stuff that's super overpowered. Like for instance, this is a very crappy explanation, but you know what? We'll go to a city, village. Like certain points like this, you've got so much solid cover around here, all these rocks and little cover inside. So if this was paintball for me, I would be holding along the outsides of the points. So as enemies pushed in, as the other team started to push in, if this is our capture point, we could just fall back. It's not instantly just overrun and that's it. For paintball, if there's enough enemies with inside your spawn position, you'd lose that point and you can't spawn there anymore. Obviously, we can't spawn on flags itself, but rally points, all that kind of stuff. So the last thing you want is an enemy to wander in there to try and capture the point. You lose your spawn point, then your team gets wiped. You lose your flag and you've got to head back there again. Where if you defend from the outside position, you have room to fall back. You're protecting your rally point and all that kind of stuff. So a lot of the capture points and all that kind of stuff on here have a lot of more solid cover on the outside, and as you push in towards the point, all you've got is buildings, some barrels, and some tiny little rock walls.
So, looking at this screen, where are you putting your fob and your rally? Come on, squad leader.
Okay, so Kohan brought back that whole should you be placing a fob on a capture point? That whole debate, and this map is going to question that again. For me, I would probably be dropping my fob in one of these buildings, my hab in another. The habs are only sized to fit in these bigger buildings. So one of the things is a lot of people are going to know if there's a fob on here, they know where the hab is. If there's a hab in the middle, instantly mortar it. If there's players running out of this building, you know hab's in there and they're coming out.
I think, as you astutely pointed out earlier, there is no cover.
Yeah. Habs, they're going to be a bit of a pain in the ass. They're going to be that giveaway, but that whole defending from the outside is going to come into play so much. These days, you don't really see a lot of players putting down 50 cows and like the SPGs and all that kind of stuff. It's just a couple mortars and maybe you get a repair station. This, you're going to want to have like a mounted 50 up here looking down this road, another one on this balcony facing out this way.
And eventually those are going to be some hellacious toe positions too, when we start running IFEs through those.
Yeah, well, these buildings are all designed with the animation system in mind, so you can parkour up onto a couple boxes, up onto the balcony. You could breach through the second floor, drop down into the first floor, and shoot some guys that are downstairs trying to defend through the windows. So there's a lot of kind of sneaking around, all that kind of stuff. The map itself it's very basic, but the way it's going to play out with all the lack of cover inside the flags, more cover on the outside, and then the animation system coming into play, being able to garrison buildings from a second floor and breaching to the ground floor.
Yeah, no, the verticality it's not high in this map necessarily from the points, but it is definitely kind of going to prove to be vital to manage. You're going to want to have that elevated line of fire. We've had a couple questions. I do want to touch on some of those, and I think this is a good one. I know you cannot necessarily go into the technical details of it, but why do some maps run really well, with some maps run awful? What makes a map run well?
Oh, what makes a map run? Geez. Like draw distance of certain objects, shadows, foliage. Why is my animation system not working? This is great. It's just a number of different factors. It's never just one thing. For one map, it might be A. For one map, it might be B.
Probably worth noting it might be A, B, and C, and fixing one doesn't necessarily fix the others. So you could see, an area get polished off, and then go, oh, this one's here too.
Yeah, exactly. It's never going to be the same, and it's kind of just a random thing as you go through the development of the map, constantly checking, making sure it's running good. If you notice a drop in frames, it was probably the last thing that you just did.
Dog's Buddy has a good point. We should always blame Nordic for these problems, so that is definitely true.
No comment.
Let's see. Lord of Cringe notes that desert maps run really well. I think we've kind of touched on that. Let's see.
Well, one thing about that.
Go ahead. Yeah.
Desert maps run real well. A lot of the kind of more lush maps, Gorodok, Yeho, Fool's Road, all that kind of stuff. Trees only draw out to a certain distance. As you can see, there's a whole bunch of trees out on the surrounding terrain, and I turn around, and there's trees for days, bro. Trees for days. Trees all out there. This is a 4K map, and the trees draw across the entire thing. So this is going to be, when choppers and everything are on here, it's going to look sick, like from up high. Just being able to, like, you see a smoke, like a yellow smoke grenade down here, and the chopper drops down near the road and picks the guys up and flies off again. It's just, yeah.
I'm stoked to have more uses for smoke other than messing with your friendly medics so they can't res people. Smoke the enemies, folks. Smoke the enemies. There. Let's see here. Is it the rocks, grass, GPU? Like, is that what's causing it? This is a kind of a follow up from the Lord of Cringe. Are they GPU heavy or CPU heavy? Is that something that comes into your calculations? I think that could be
That's
more of a
more of
QA optimization
more of
thing.
an accident than yeah, that kind of thing.
Ashman Media says the game is the highest quality texturing with 4K, so he's got some compliments for you. Um, I'm curious. Are there any parts of maps that you look at and just go, "Oh my God, they're playing this wrong. How could they do that?" Like when you're actually
All
out
the
there
time,
playing.
all the time, all the time. Um, it's annoying at the same time because every time when Bazzer comes on, I constantly get spammed of make a squad, make a squad. Oh, tell us all the secrets, where to put a fob and all that. And it's like, oh, dude, let me just play the game. But there is certain points where it's just like, yeah, I don't know how to explain it. Sometimes I'm like driving driving one of the vehicles through the map, and it's just like, how do you know this line that's so quick? There's no trees, no rocks, or anything to get in my way, and I think it's just from like me flying around the maps and just like adjusting things and just being like, oh well, this is like a pretty good line of sight straight through. I could get my vehicle straight through that, and I implement it when I'm playing the game. And yeah, when other people don't do it, I'm like, oh goddamn, like sit down, I'll teach you something. But I just let other people people will learn their own way, and I learn off them as well. So it's a bit of a mix. I was actually trying to show something on on my screen, but I realized that I'm not screen sharing now. So that didn't
Well,
work.
you're welcome to screen share again. There's a good question here. What makes night maps so hard?
Light sources are very expensive, and then you've got the gamma wankers that constantly change their gamma. I will hand to Jesus that I've never touched my gamma on a game before, but until we get some way of fixing that kind of thing and making light sources not cost so much, then maybe, hopefully, I would love a night map. Like I begged one of the guys on the art team to make me a PEQ-15, one of the little laser attachments that go on top of rifles. And he's like, why? Are we going to actually implement that kind of mechanic? And I'm like, no, it'll be cool. Like,
Like, it's
I
just gonna
want
be
one.
rad. Just do it.
So I begged one of the modders to do it, and I think it was Rots or something. He ended up doing it, and oh, it's like, oh. I just saw it, and I'm just like, yes, thank you. Now, can we get it off him? Can we implement it? But
This is one of the reasons we made Chance wear pants for this stream. He didn't want to.
I'd be naked if I could.
well, you probably could, but let's not try. Yeah, you've talked about playing a lot. What roles do you like to play in squad? What draws you to the playing side?
Well, obviously I like squad leading, but to a certain extent, I have like I can't spell patience, so I don't have patience. I love GL, like Grenadier, and the US LMG with the M145 scope. That thing's, if I'm squad leading and some guy takes a marksman kit, I've literally got to sit him down. It's like, why? Like the LMG kit, you've got the zoom, you've got the stability using the bipod, and you have like shit tons of rounds. You're gonna do the same thing as you would as a marksman. Just like
Just don't be
get
that
rid of
guy.
marksman.
Don't be the mark.
Yeah, just get rid of marksman.
We shouldn't say get rid of marksmen. They provide a very important part of squad. I have worked with some excellent marksmen, especially with mortar teams, and they are invaluable to the team. Don't listen to Chance.
No,
This is
they
also
lose
why we
tickets
make
for
him
you.
wear pants. No. He's been bad today. Yeah, I like it. You mentioned you like the squad lead. Squad leading is difficult. Do you have any tips for squad leaders or people that are thinking about taking on the squad leader mantle for the first time?
First time as your squad lead, I'd really suggest, like I've told a couple guys who are quite new, to play as a squad lead on OP First Light. It's a small map. You've got like 5 flags. If center point gets rushed, you obviously only have 2 choices, castle or nil room. So you can play a defensive point, you can play attacking, and it's just a very straightforward map. And to coordinate with other squads, it's very simple because the fob placements on that map are very limited because of the size of the map. So if you start up a squad, try and get another squad to try and rely on another squad to actually be the one to place down the fobs, and you just coordinate with them. That's probably the best way of getting into squad leading.
Right on.
That map.
That
and allowing
also
someone
kind
else
of
to
yeah.
worry
That
about it.
brings. Sorry, I didn't mean to talk over you there. Yeah, that brings to mind the earlier you were talking about how you've kind of you have things in mind when you build a map, and you're looking at Camdash to try to make it one team has the asymmetric opportunity to be a little bit faster, get from point to point. Do you see any other maps, either that you've made or other people have made, that are really kind of purpose built for one thing? The way Operation First Light is good for learning the squad lead.
I'd probably say Basra. Basra was designed around just punishing the US. Just like if the US can't get inside the city within the first 15 minutes, it's going to be such a shit fight. I designed it around just like I wanted it to be that massive fight. I like being able to fight over a point, and when you actually get that point, you feel like so good about it. Like, wow, we earned this point. And I find on a few maps, or like a few different points on those maps, the firefights themselves are just very like over and done with. And when you capture it, you're just like, all right, next one. But sometimes when you're playing like Invasion or AAS1 on Basra, and you start to push into outskirts, I think it is. Like, if the US can't take that point within the first 15 minutes, when you eventually take that, you're just like, oh my god, we won! And you look at the tickets, and you've dropped down like 120 tickets, and you're like, well, that was sick. We're probably going to lose this round, but that was a pretty epic battle that we just had for just one flag. And you get that usually on Yeho, but it's always the same point, which is storage. Which is why I'm a big advocate for kind of changing that up. But
Yeah, and you've mentioned kind of getting into some gameplay layers, and I know Ross has been kind of deep in looking at some of those changes and trying to make not only that, but we're looking at new modes. We're going to start testing like random AAS, potentially territory control. A lot of that stuff has been in the recaps. If you're curious about that, just hit up the recaps. There's screenshots. There's other things like that. Join us in Discord. Talk about
I
those
think
too.
Fuzzhead was doing some as well. So
Yeah. Fuzzhead has been really. Fuzzhead is a new developer from the old Project Reality days, and kind of looking at user experience and looking at a lot of layers. So, yeah, I know he's been very interested in testing some kind of new game modes and things like that. So be sure you're in Discord if you want to get involved there. Fuzzhead is especially vocal on Reddit and other things too. Really great guy. Not a mapper though. So I do want to get back on topic there a little bit. We've talked about points. We've talked about things you don't want to do. But one thing that I think that some people like to see more of is kind of ambush points, the kind of interstitial areas. Squad is about logistics, and a lot of times, how do you make the road to the point interesting?
it all depends on what faction is coming from what direction. So for Camdash Invasion, I have about 3 different ambush points between the 2nd and 5th flag. There's 9 flags on Invasion, and you push horizontally across the map for like 4 or 5 flags, and then you push up vertically for the remaining flags. So you're, in a sense, going across like 8Ks. So it'll feel a lot larger than it is. And some of the parts of the road are actually designed so it's like whatever vehicle you take down this road, it's staying on that road. So IEDs, mines, lats, like obviously with our new vehicles that we slightly teased in the recaps and that kind of thing. When those eventually come along, um, as a squad lead, if I hear one of those vehicles, I would instantly be telling my lats, just like, I don't want to see you again until I don't hear that vehicle anymore. Like, this map is going to be designed around just taking out those vehicles, and it just eliminates that team from using that road network. And then they're stuck going the long route or taking that risk and trying to go off-road. But in these specific areas, I don't know, I'd probably pay them if they could get through. If they could get a vehicle through it, it'd be like, wow, all right then.
Yeah, there was a beautiful match over the weekend, or over the week. I think it was SEC week 2, DLG versus ATB maybe, where they did take a 30 cal or a 30 millimeter out and managed to just wreck 2 squads transport. Lost the vehicle, but they left these 2 squads stranded in the middle of nowhere. So like it was a beautiful move. They had to hoof it or go back, and it's like that is a tactical choice that really develops for maps like like Cam
What,
Dash.
they just
Like,
took the vehicles out and left the infantry.
they eventually lost their 30 millimeter, or 30, yeah, because they got blown to hell. I mean, they lost it. They took out like a lobby or something. Troops bailed everywhere. There's 2 squads there. Obviously, you're going to get a AT fire, but it was a kind of a tactical trade off that you're not fighting over a point, but because they took a vehicle out because of the map conditions, they went out, took this chance, and ended up making sure that like the enemy team couldn't get there quick. So you have this huge advantage of being able to move from flag to flag and already have domination established. And that is something that we have seen on Balaya. Tunnel has been.
Oh, yes.
And the reason I touch on Balaya again is the Lord of Cringe wants to know what magic did the Mapmakers use to make Balaya run like a dream.
I don't know. There's not a lot of foliage. I've always wanted to go revisit it, but obviously I've been like trying to make sure Camdesh has nothing for QA to worry about, nothing for Nordic to break. But yeah, foliage-wise, there's not as much as Camdesh. Probably also the density of the villages and all that kind of stuff. I don't know. I don't want to badmouth myself, but I could have probably done a better job on Balea.
I would point out that you said there are no mistakes; there are learning experiences, and Balea has definitely. I mean, it's been an iterative map. It's been getting polished here and there. So like, you're constantly learning, even when you think you're being a little hard on yourself.
Yeah, like as I was doing it, like I'm Aussie. I've seen snow twice in my life, and I'm 28. So for me to go ahead and make an Eastern European snow map, and my 2 previous maps before that were both Middle East and pretty much flat. So these slight rolling hills and snow were both like, oh my god, like I don't know if I can do this. Eastern European assets to me personally, they're just so repetitive, and I want to try like with the Middle East assets, I can create different shapes and all that kind of stuff where it's a bit harder to do that kind of thing with the Eastern European assets in my opinion, in the time frame that I had, and trying to get like this. Always wanted this snow but kind of gritty firefighting going on, punishing in the open, really close quarters, and just like, is someone going to be around this corner kind of thing, and trying to make a balance of that. And I wasn't too set on trying to create these custom shaped assets of houses and that kind of thing. So now when I see it after some of the stuff that I've created for Camdesh, or Axton and I, like the different shaped buildings, all that kind of stuff that we actually made out of the assets that are available in the SDK. And it's like, man, if I did some of the stuff like that for Balea, I could have made this point really cool and expanded this and that. So personally, I would love to have another little crack at doing like a 2.0 of Balea. I kind of forgotten the question, but
Well, no, I think we've gotten through some real. I personally, I found it really revealing, kind of in your process, that you're kind of looking at the overall shape of the map. Like you are looking for shapes that are pleasing or things that make sense to you, where it's not just I'm gonna make a base here, and I'm gonna do this, this, and this. It's gonna have these features. You're actually kind of looking at sculpting it aesthetically to make it what it should be, and that is something that,
Yeah.
yeah, like that's cool.
Like recently, we just got a couple new set of brushes for for the terrain, and it just allows me to speed up the development of roughing the terrain up, so it's not so flat and um, just so rolly. And I would love to just go through Balea and do that kind of thing because it would add so much more to the map. Just being able to create little bits of dead ground and just the slight bits of cover between these open fields. So something like that, it's a very basic thing to just go across the map and just a couple clicks here and there in different areas, and it would probably play out completely different because now you have these little divots where a player could be hiding now, where previously it was just flat and you saw each other. Now, like, I don't know.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point.
One
Like
day.
that's something that we don't necessarily consider when you're running over a little divot in the ground on a lot of the maps or trying to sprint to the fence for cover. That like if you add a little bit more terrain variety, you suddenly could have a squad anywhere. Like a squad could be camping in that ditch. It could be anywhere. There could be a rally over there. So
Yeah, like
yeah,
today I
yeah,
spent 6 hours doing that on Camdash, and because previously I was talking to Axe and I'm like, man, I love this map, but it's so flat. Like we need to do something. And we ended up getting this brush set, and I smashed through it today, and I'm just like, this map is so good. I shouldn't talk it up because if someone turns around and goes, oh, this map is crap. I'm like, oh, but I did all that.
Well, as the saying
But
goes, everybody has their own opinion. And opinions are like assholes; they all stink. No, yeah, like don't be so hard on yourself. We've seen decent development of Camdash over recaps, and it's really shaping into a beautiful map. You know, it's stunning to look at. I've not had the chance to run around on it yet. I'm a little terrified of that happening now that I've heard about what you're going to be torturing us with. But yeah, no, I think that's going to be a really cool map. It's going to be an awesome map, especially when we have Bradleys on it and people are fighting together, and you have to. You need to be on your toes. You need to be working as a unit. You need to be fighting alongside your IFE to make sure they survive.
yeah, like I implemented a thing like when I was talking about like certain teams having a bit of an advantage. Like the insurgents on all of these layers, the insurgents actually, besides one, all the insurgents have 3 Logi technicals, where the US only have 2 transport Logis. Obviously, the US Logis can hold more supplies, but are a lot slower. And this map being so focused around creating a defensive point, constantly bringing in supplies so the squad leaders can build these points up, the insurgents are going to be able to resupply these points so much quicker. Oh, my screen's just turned off.
We didn't. Hey, you're back.
But it's things like that will change it up. If a team loses their logis on Camdash, like good luck holding a point.
Yeah, no, it's going to be brutal, and I think maybe the blow will be softened a little bit when people are actually playing with Brits and things on that map. We have some new toys coming to make everything a little bit more
Yes.
exciting. It's not all going to be brutal punishment from Chance here, as much as some of you might enjoy being punished by Chance.
Oh no, it's going to be all brutal. I want people to complain like they did on Basra. It's not. It's not balanced, and it's like, oh, the insurgents always win. Oh, the US always win. It's like, how is that not balanced? Like, all right then. Both teams are winning, and it's not balanced.
All right, so we're getting close to kind of wrapping it up toward the end here. Is there? I kind of want to lob this at you. It's a softball. I'll warn you that one. If you could add one feature to Squad right now to whatever that dream world would be, what would you do?
One thing. I don't want to be that guy, but I'd love night vision. I don't want special forces or anything like that and silences. But I've always thought of a really cool way to do it would be night vision for the US, but it's like on a timer, kind of like Battlefield Special Forces, where it kind of like died off and it had to recharge again. So you had to use it. Like there was only a certain amount of time you could use it for. And then give the insurgents or the militia or whatever team they're versing flashlights that kind of do the same thing with timers. And they also have the ability to build deployables. Instead of the sandbags as a basic rifleman, they could place down like a barrel and set it alight. If they keep digging, it just lights up, and it kind of makes the US's night vision kind of obsolete because of the brightness.
Yeah, and
Maybe
I
like
mean,
fire tire walls, all that kind of thing.
I'm now imagining a really cool map where you could fight for an objective that would turn the power on or something, and you could mess with people that way if you had to fight in
Yeah,
a
that'd be
lit
sick.
warehouse instead or something. So, okay, we're coming up on a full hour here. We've got about 2 minutes left. If anybody has a last minute question there, hit it at us. Chance, if you have any kind of parting words, I see you have appropriately finished your drink right on time.
I don't.
Well, that's fair.
I'd
You are like up late. We have made Chance stay out of bed for us. It's coming up on like 1 a.m. there. Dog's Body wants to know if you can have your baby.
Yes.
So that's good. What's up with roads, Chance from Stormopolis? I don't know.
Oh,
You have
don't worry
corrugated
about
roads
it,
in
yeah.
Australia? That's a thing, I guess.
No, don't worry about Storm. He's if you look at Bazza really carefully on a few of the buildings, he completely put the wrong material in the wrong place. So yeah, just why'd you do that, Storm?
Yeah. Well, that's a shame. We're gonna have to shame Stom for this
Yeah,
for eternity.
it's said here now, so you can't argue against it.
Yes,
I
Stom is the new Nordic. Blame him.
I actually did it.
So you can blame Chance too, but Chance is so lovable, we can't hate him for it. Alrighty, so we have put another squad chat in the bag. Thank you for everybody for joining us today. Especially thank you to Chance. You've stayed up late. We're gonna tuck you in, put you in your jammies, and make sure you get a good day of rest and start fresh on Monday.
Get naked.
That's. I'm sure the lady will approve. That might be the reward for doing all the mapping is when you come home naked. She's a little bit more excited. All right, yeah, that's another one. We'll have it archived for you on YouTube in a little bit. Thank you for joining us, and we'll be doing this again soon. We will talk to you all later.